I still remember that moment so clearly, like a stab to the chest. Junior's birthday party was supposed to be a celebration, right? But when he introduced me as the babysitter, in front of all his coworkers, loudly, proudly, like it was some joke, I knew something was wrong. I had spent weeks planning this, making sure the venue was perfect, the food was just right. I even paid for it all. And there he was, making me feel like nothing. Like I was invisible. The sting of those words cut deeper than I ever imagined it would. The babysitter. In front of everyone. As if I didn't matter, as if I wasn't enough. And then there was the awkward silence that followed. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, some curious, some pitying, others judging. But it didn't matter. Because all I could think about was how I felt, humiliated. Betrayed. How could he? How could he stand there, in front of all these people, and reduce me to nothing but a joke? I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I quietly left. My heart pounded in my chest, but I kept my face unreadable. I had to get out of there before the tears started. Tell me, have you ever been humiliated in front of the people you care about the most? Or worse, by the one you thought you could trust? Drop a comment with a yes or no. Does betrayal feel the same, no matter who it comes from? I'm Vienna. I'm 32, and I've spent most of my life drawing, freelance illustrator, just me and my sketchpad against the world. It's not always glamorous, but I've built a life for myself. A quiet one. Then there's Junior. He's 28, a finance assistant, and back then, he was this bright, shining thing that I couldn't help but be drawn to. We met at a gallery opening. It was hosted by Sky Rowland, a friend I'd known for years, and she'd invited me to showcase some of my work. The whole thing was a little high society for my taste. Lots of champagne, the kind of crowd that liked to talk about art like they owned it, but then there was Junior. He wasn't part of the crowd I usually ran with, but there he was, leaning against a sculpture, watching me. He introduced himself like he already knew me. And in a way, he did. He'd seen my work online, saw me sketching at cafes or posting my pieces on social media. He was charming, funny, the kind of guy who made me feel like I was the only person in the room, even in a sea of strangers. He was younger than me, yes, but there was this maturity about him. He didn't act like a typical guy his age. I liked that. At first, I thought maybe it was because he was more thoughtful, more grounded than most. Maybe he was just different. So, we started dating. And for a while, it was perfect. He was still figuring things out at work, but I didn't mind. I had a stable life, a solid income. I helped him out. At first, it was small things. A meal here, a little extra money to get through the month there. But it wasn't just that. I upgraded his wardrobe, nothing extravagant, just some nice shirts and shoes to help him look more professional. He loved it. And I loved seeing the smile on his face when he'd step out in something I'd picked for him. He'd always say, "You have the best taste, Vienna. I don't know what I'd do without you." In those early days, everything felt right. It felt easy. We were two people who were just trying to figure things out. Sure, there were moments where I'd remind him about his responsibilities, about managing money and staying on top of things, but those were just small bumps. I never thought they'd turn into this. But I was happy. Or at least, I thought I was. And maybe, in the beginning, I was just so caught up in the sweetness of it all, the laughter, the easy dates, the talks about the future, that I didn't see what was happening behind the scenes. The way he'd slowly start relying on me more. And more. Until it was no longer just about helping him out, it became a pattern. A need. Have you ever felt like you were giving so much, but something didn't feel quite right? Like the person you were with needed you more than you realized? Things started to shift slowly. At first, I didn't notice it. How could I? It was all so subtle, so small. Junior moved into my place, just temporarily, he said. He needed a place to stay while he figured things out with his job. I didn't mind. I told myself it was just a phase, a temporary adjustment. But it was never just that. I remember the first time he made the joke. We were sitting on the couch after a long day, watching some mindless show I didn't really care about, when he said, "You're like a mom sometimes, you know that? Always making sure everything's in order." It's cute, but a little much. I laughed it off, told him he was just teasing. But the more he said it, the more it started to sting. At first, I brushed it aside, thinking it was nothing. But then, there was the next comment. And the one after that. "You're so serious all the time. Chill out, Vienna, it's just a joke." I didn't get it. He used to love how focused I was, how driven I was. He used to tell me it was one of the things that drew him to me. But now it seemed like everything I did or said was being picked apart, turned into some kind of flaw. And then there was the bigger thing. The one I couldn't ignore. I'd asked him once, months into living together, why I'd never met his friends. It wasn't like I was desperate to meet them, but I thought it was weird. We'd been dating for a while, and I'd heard about them, Eliezer Alvarado, Blake Butler, and Ryder Benson, so many times. But he never seemed to bring them around. He always had an excuse, something that made me feel like it wasn't the right time. "Maybe next weekend," he'd say. Or, "They're busy, you know how they are." But the excuses piled up. And I started to wonder why I hadn't met these people, especially after all this time. And then came the day I overheard him. I was in my studio, sketching, the door to the living room slightly ajar. I didn't mean to listen in, but I could hear his voice through the crack. He was on the phone with someone. I didn't recognize the name at first, but it didn't matter because what he said next, those words, pierced me. "Yeah, Vienna's great and all, but she's just too intense. I don't know how much longer I can handle it, man. It's like, every little thing with her is a big deal. She needs to chill." I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. Too intense. The person on the other end of the line laughed, but I couldn't hear their response. All I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears, the pounding of my heart. I wanted to run in there, to confront him, to ask how he could say something like that. How could he think that about me after everything we'd been through? But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I stayed in my studio, staring at the unfinished sketch in front of me. I didn't know what was worse, hearing those words from him, or the fact that he didn't even think to apologize after. He didn't even notice I knew. Junior's turning 29. I remember the day he told me what he wanted for his birthday. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone when he looked up at me and said, "I want a rooftop party. You know, like the ones influencers have. Big. Fancy. Instagram-worthy." I didn't blink. I smiled. He'd always been this way, dreaming big, wanting things that felt just out of reach. At first, I thought it was cute. I wanted to make him happy. And maybe, somewhere deep down, I wanted to prove that I could give him the kind of life he seemed to think he deserved. "Of course," I said, already thinking of the details. I got to work immediately. I found the perfect rooftop venue, one with views of the skyline, a place that screamed luxury. I hired a catering company to handle everything, making sure the menu would impress even the pickiest guests. I designed custom invitations, sleek, elegant, something that looked like it came straight out of an influencer's feed. I wanted this night to be unforgettable for him. The cost was significant, nearly $3,500. But I didn't even think twice about it. I had the money. And it was his birthday, right? I'd planned birthday parties before, but this was going to be something else. I didn't mention the price to Junior. I didn't ask him to contribute, after all, he had his own expenses, and it wasn't like he had much extra. I figured it was just part of being in a relationship. I wanted to make his day special. The invitations went out. The venue was secured. The caterers confirmed. Everything was falling into place. But there was something odd, now that I think about it. Junior didn't offer to help. He didn't even ask if he could pitch in. When I'd mentioned the costs to him, he just nodded, like it was no big deal. "Thanks, Vienna. This is going to be amazing," he said, with a smile that seemed so genuine, I convinced myself it didn't matter. But deep down, I started to feel that familiar pang. The one that I had pushed aside so many times before. He didn't even offer to contribute in any way. Not even a little. And I let it slide. I told myself, it's his birthday. He deserves it. This will make him happy. I convinced myself that it was fine. That it wasn't a big deal. But a part of me, the part one tried to ignore, knew something wasn't right. I was the one putting in all the effort. All the money. All the planning. And he just showed up, smiling, like it was all for him to enjoy without a second thought. I should have seen it then, the imbalance. The subtle ways I was starting to give more than I had ever received. But I was too wrapped up in the idea of making him happy. The night of the party arrived, and I was already on edge. I'd spent days, weeks really, preparing for this moment. It was supposed to be a celebration, a moment for us both to enjoy. But somehow, deep down, I knew it wouldn't go the way I had imagined. I wore a soft blue dress, a color I knew Junior liked on me. He'd actually picked it out for me, just like the shirts and suits he loved to see me wear. I slipped it on carefully, adjusting the straps, looking at myself in the mirror. The dress fit perfectly, and for a moment, I allowed myself to feel good. I told myself that tonight would be different, that it was his night, and we'd be together, enjoying what I'd worked so hard to make perfect. But when we arrived at the rooftop venue, something shifted. Junior had this distance about him. It wasn't anything overt, but it was in the way he moved through the crowd. His focus elsewhere, his smile more for the people around him than for me. He mingled, talking to his coworkers, and I was left to float around the edges, unsure where I fit in. I tried to remind myself that it was his night, that maybe he was just excited. But as the hours passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When he finally introduced me to his coworkers, Gunnar Bailey, Kennedy O'Neill, Eddie Mason, I thought maybe this would be the moment when I'd feel included. Maybe, just maybe, it would all come together. But that didn't happen. Instead, when Junior took my hand and said, "This is Vienna," I expected a smile, a gesture that showed he was proud to have me by his side. Instead, he added, "She watches my niece sometimes. Basically the babysitter." There was a pause. A thick, heavy silence that filled the air. I couldn't even breathe. His coworkers laughed awkwardly, glancing at each other like they weren't sure if they should find it funny or uncomfortable. I just stood there, stunned. My heart skipped a beat, and my body went cold. Was this really happening? Was he really standing there, introducing me like that, in front of these strangers? Like I was some hired help. The laughter died down quickly, and I tried to force a smile, but it felt so out of place, so wrong. I wanted to say something, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. My throat tightened, and I felt this weird, choking sensation, like everything was suddenly too tight, too overwhelming. And then he winked at me, as if that could erase everything. "It's just a joke, babe," he said with that playful tone I used to love so much. A joke. I wanted to scream. To ask him why he thought this was funny. To tell him that I was more than just someone who did things for him, someone who helped, who gave. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was paralyzed, standing there with a forced smile on my face while my mind screamed at me to leave. To walk out and never look back. I don't know how I made it through the rest of the night. Every time I looked at him, he acted like nothing had happened, like everything was fine. But inside, I was crumbling. That comment, that insult, it had cracked something in me, something I hadn't even known was there until it broke. I don't remember exactly how I made it through the rest of the party. It's all a blur now, like I was floating through it all, disconnected. The laughter, the conversations, it all felt so distant, like I was watching a movie that wasn't even mine to be in. I knew I had to leave. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I didn't even look at Junior. I just slipped away, quietly, like a ghost. I grabbed my coat, moving through the crowd as if my very presence no longer mattered. When I stepped outside, the cool air hit me like a shock. It was almost too much to bear, too overwhelming. But it was better than staying there, surrounded by people who saw me as nothing more than a joke. A babysitter. I didn't look back. I just walked. Fast. Away from everything. Away from him. Later that night, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was Junior. "Where'd you go? You're making a scene." I stared at the message, feeling a bitter laugh rise in my chest. A scene? Was he seriously blaming me for walking away? After what he did to me? I didn't reply. I didn't even bother to think about it. What was there to say? How could I even explain the hurt, the confusion, the betrayal? Words couldn't fix this. They couldn't fix what he had done, how he had made me feel so small. I sat there in silence, the room spinning as I processed everything. The night played over in my mind like a movie on repeat. And with each passing memory, the same realization hit me harder than the last. Every moment, every little thing I had brushed aside, every time I convinced myself that it was just a phase, it wasn't a phase. It was a pattern. And I had been blind to it. Flashbacks flickered in my mind like a montage, each memory sharper than the last. The first time he referred to me as the babysitter, as if I was just someone there to take care of his problems. The countless times he would brush off my suggestions, my ideas, like they didn't matter. The way he would joke about how serious I was, as if my ambitions and goals were a burden to him. The way he'd never introduced me to his friends, like I wasn't worth introducing. And now, the insult at the party. It all came rushing back, flooding me with the realization that I had been giving so much, only to be treated like nothing more than a convenience. I closed my eyes, taking a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. How had I let it go this far? I don't know how long I sat there. Hours, maybe. But in that silence, something shifted. I knew, deep down, that I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep pretending that things were okay when they weren't. I couldn't keep ignoring the truth. I had to make a choice. And that choice wasn't him. The next day, I woke up with a headache, the kind that comes from too many emotions crashing over you all at once. The house felt too quiet, too empty without him here. And for a second, I allowed myself to wonder if maybe I had overreacted, if maybe I had just misunderstood. But then the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Junior standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers. His face was softer than I expected, like he was trying to show he was sorry without saying it outright. In his other hand, he had a box of leftover cake from the party, half eaten, like it was supposed to be some kind of peace offering. He smiled that smile. The one that used to make me melt. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low, like he was trying to sound sincere. "It was a joke. You know that, right? You need to lighten up, Vienna." I stood there, staring at him, not sure what to say. The words caught in my throat. A joke? How could he say that? How could he think I would just forget about what happened? But before I could say anything, he moved closer, placing the flowers in my hands like he thought that would make everything better. "Come on," he continued, trying to smooth things over. "Let's just put it behind us." I was thinking, maybe we could take a weekend trip, you know. Just the group, me, you, Sienna Patel, Parker Pope, Aurelia Meza. You'd like that, right? A weekend trip? With his friends? The same people he'd never introduced me to until now. The same people who had probably heard him call me the babysitter and laughed about it behind my back. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to scream and ask why I should even consider this, why I should go along with it like nothing had happened. But instead, I stayed quiet. And then he hit me with it. I've already looked at the Airbnb, he said, his tone casual, like this was no big deal. But you'll need to pay up front. I'll pay you back, of course. It was a small thing, but it hit me harder than it should have. There it was again, him asking me to pay for everything, to take on the responsibility, while he just coasted along. I didn't even hesitate, not really. I nodded and said, okay, I'll do it. He grinned, and for a moment, I could almost believe that everything was back to normal. That this was just a bump in the road, and we'd move on like we always did. But as I watched him walk away, carrying that stupid cake and leaving behind his smile, I knew something deeper was at play here. I was done being manipulated. I was done playing the role he had assigned me. And I had a plan now. I wasn't just going to sit back and let him make the same mistakes over and over. I was going to make him see. I was going to show him that I wasn't the fool he thought I was. The decision to send him off without me was harder than I expected. For a brief moment, I hesitated. Maybe it wasn't right. Maybe I was being too petty. But then I remembered the way he treated me. The way he had disrespected me, not just once, but over and over again, until I had no choice but to see it for what it was. I needed to make a stand. This wasn't just about a joke gone wrong or a hurtful comment at a party anymore. It was about me, about my worth, and about how I would no longer allow him, or anyone, to make me feel small. So, I sent him a text that morning, a simple excuse that felt like the final straw in everything I had been tolerating. I can't make it. I have too many work deadlines. Junior, of course, was disappointed, but he didn't argue. Okay, babe. You sure? It's gonna be fun with everyone. But I get it. He sent me one of those kissy face emojis, like he thought everything was fine now, like he thought this was just a little bump in the road. I didn't reply. As soon as I heard him leave, I moved quickly. I had a plan. I contacted the Airbnb host, under my name, of course, and cancelled the reservation. It was non-refundable, and that felt so satisfying. A small act of rebellion against the person who thought he could take and take without consequence. I thought about how many times I had paid for things, or picked up the slack, or done everything to make his life easier. And this time, I wasn't going to let him think he could just walk all over me anymore. Once that was taken care of, I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through old photos. There they were, so many moments, so many memories I had saved. Photos of Junior and me on vacations, him laughing and lounging in my apartment, the endless pictures I had taken when I was planning his birthday. Every single picture was a reminder of how much I had given, how much I had invested, and how little I had received in return. And then, I did something I never thought I'd do. I posted them. I created an album on social media, pictures of us, of me trying so hard to make everything perfect. The caption, though, was the final act of defiance. Babysitter perks, I guess. I hit post and watched as the album went live. The word stung, but I felt a strange sense of relief. Like I had taken back some power, some control. I knew what was coming. I knew he would see it. I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had finally done something for myself. It didn't take long. I hadn't even finished my coffee the next morning when the notifications started rolling in, likes, comments, shares. People I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly popping up to say things like, wow, didn't know it was like that, or, you deserve better. And just like that, the carefully curated version of Junior that he presented to the world started to unravel. I wasn't the only one watching. His co-workers, Lucian Jennings, Palmer Vargas, both unfollowed him within an hour. I didn't expect that. Maybe they'd seen the cracks too, maybe they just didn't want to be associated with the fallout. Either way, the silence from his circle was loud. Then, something even more unexpected happened. Ryder Benson, the friend who always seemed closest to Junior, the one who used to avoid eye contact with me at every gathering, he texted me. Didn't know. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time, reading those 4 words over and over. I didn't reply. What was there to say? If he didn't know, it's because Junior didn't let him know. Because he never let anyone see me clearly, not the way I really was. Junior, on the other hand, panicked. 15 texts in a row. Please call me. Can we talk? I didn't mean to hurt you. It was a stupid joke. I love you. I messed up. Each message more desperate than the last. It was like watching someone try to tape back together a broken mirror, pointless and pitiful. I blocked him. Not because I was angry anymore. But because I was done giving him access to parts of me he never respected. I had spent so long trying to be understanding, trying to see the best in him, trying to fix things. But some people don't want to be fixed. Some people just want to keep taking. And then, the final blow. A mutual acquaintance, someone who worked with Junior, sent me a screenshot. It was an internal company memo. Junior's supervisor had apparently pulled him aside after someone forwarded the photo album I'd posted. Turns out, Junior had been bragging at work for months about how he owned this great apartment in the city, the same one I'd been paying rent on for nearly a year. His boss wasn't amused. Professional reputation ruined. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But inside, something finally settled. Like I had been carrying a weight for months and suddenly, I could just set it down. It was a few weeks later when I ran into her. I was leaving a cafe, head down, headphones in, when someone gently tapped my shoulder. I turned, and there she was, Lillian Lee. I recognized her from old photos Junior had once shown me, back when I was still naive enough to think that the way he spoke about his ex was honest, instead of cruel. She looked different in person. Stronger. Like someone who had rebuilt herself. She smiled, not unkindly. You're Vienna, right? I nodded slowly. I just wanted to say, she continued, I saw your post. And, he did the same to me. My breath caught for a second. I wasn't sure whether to feel vindicated or heartbroken. She reached into her bag and handed me a business card, her own. If you ever want to talk, really talk, I've got stories too. We exchanged a small nod, that silent understanding only women with shared pain can give each other. And then she walked off, just like that, leaving behind the ghost of a man we both once thought was someone else entirely. I stood there for a moment longer, then tucked her card into my coat pocket and continued on. These days, things feel different. Quieter. Softer. I met someone. His name's Jack Gill. We bumped into each other at a little bookstore tucked away from the noise. He was in the poetry aisle, thumbing through Neruda. I made some awkward comment about how most men just fake liking poetry. He laughed, really laughed. Then asked what I was reading. Jack doesn't talk over me. He listens. He asks questions that make me think. He holds space. He makes room. We're taking it slow. I don't need fast anymore. I need real. And maybe that's the biggest difference now. I've stopped trying to explain my worth to someone who's already made up their mind. I've stopped shrinking just to make someone else feel tall. Because I've learned something. When someone calls you out of your name, when they minimize you, mock you, reduce you to something you're not, believe them. They're not joking. They're not being playful. They're telling you exactly where you stand in their life. I just wish I'd stood up sooner. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever loved too hard, given too much, or trusted someone who couldn't see your value, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories just like this. Because sometimes, the stories we tell are the mirrors we need most.